Welcome to the NCFE video focusing on core skills, embedding them into practice and how they link to the employer set project. Some of the types of assessments mentioned in this video may change for future employer set projects, but the skills covered will remain the same. The employer set project is set in the context of one of the occupational specialisms, which gives students the opportunity to demonstrate 7 core skills which are supported by underpinning knowledge and understanding set out in the core components. These core skills are Core Skill 1, Project Management, Core Skill 2, Researching, Core Skill 3, Working with Others, Core Skill 4, Creativity and Innovation, Core Skill 5, Problem Solving, Core Skill 6, Communication, and Core Skill 7, Reflective Evaluation. These core skills are assessed through 6 different tasks: a research task, a planning task, analysing data, presenting outcomes and conclusions, a group discussion, and reflective evaluation. Although the specific activities within each task may change each year, the general aims of the task remain the same. For example, there may be different types of data analysis that students have to carry out, but Task 3 will always remain as a data analysis task. This video focuses on the 7 core skills and how to embed them in teaching and learning to best support learners in preparing for the Employer Set Project, or ESP. Core Skills 1 is Project Management. Students must be able to independently produce a high-level project plan, which includes the project deliverables and inputs, a timetable of activities that will be carried out, including the total time for the overall project, a financial forecast that takes into account resource requirements, any ethical considerations, for example, where codes of practice will be adhered to, completed risk assessment with an appropriate level of detail, how quality outcomes will be maintained through the project. More detailed information on the core skills can be found within the core skills section of the Science T-Level Qualification Specification. Project Management is assessed in Task 2, Plan a Project of the Employer Set Project. There are various ways in which this skill can be embedded within teaching and learning to support the learner in ESP preparation. Examples include planning a project. Use examples from past assessments as a revision resource. These can also be used as a guide for creating new projects. This also gives students the opportunity to practice researching Core Skill 2 in order to inform their planning of the project. Always refer to ethical considerations when discussing the scientific research and any relevant codes of practice. When carrying out any practical activities, students should plan the activity themselves, including referencing which raw materials and equipment they require. Students should also use performers to create their own risk assessments, focusing on risk prioritization, and they should reference relevant ISO standards. As a starter activity, students could practice financial forecasting by being given scenarios from industry featuring budgets and various costs. Core Skill 2 is Researching. Students must be able to conduct a review of independently selected scientific literature and other appropriate primary and secondary sources, which include an introduction that includes the scope of the review as well as the criteria for the selection of sources, an evaluation of sources which forms the main body of any research and correctly uses a recognised referencing system, a conclusion that includes a summary of key points, along with any agreements and disagreements in the literature used. Researching is assessed in Task 1, the research task, and Task 2, planning a project within the employer set project. Some examples of how this core skill can be embedded within the teaching and learning are conducting a literature review, students review a number of primary and secondary sources related to the topic being taught, and this provides students with the opportunity to discuss the themes of the research, as well as evaluate the various sources provided based on age and relevance of the literature, reliability of the sources, reliability of the data, summary tasks where students select pieces of literature based on whether they would be suitable to use when informing a project plan, practice writing conclusions when using primary and secondary sources. They should focus on summarising the key points, using the appropriate technical terms, any gaps identified within the literature and any potential future areas of study, a full bibliography of sources within the correct use of the recognised referencing system such as Harvard, Vancouver and AMA. Core skill 3 is working with others. Students must be able to identify their own role in relation to the wider team, including team structuring and their position within the team, team working including how to collaborate with colleagues, where they sit within the wider organisational structure. Students should also be aware of their contact with external stakeholders. They should establish accountability for tasks and deliverables, as well as establish own and others' areas of expertise. Students must also meet their responsibilities when working in a wider team by ensuring that their project is compliant with the relevant health and safety requirements, environmental requirements, data protection regulations, standard operating procedures, and project timescales. Working with others is assessed in Task 2, Planning a Project, and Task 5, Group Discussion. Some examples of how this core skill can be embedded within teaching and learning are scenario-based learning. This includes planning activities where students work in groups with assigned roles. For example, within a laboratory, students then carry out the activity in line with their team structure using effective team working. Students partake in a group discussion where they respond to a concern or query based on the standard operating procedure they've carried out. This can be linked to the scenario covered previously. This also helps embed good communication, core skill 6. When carrying out standard operating procedures or general project work, students should work together to ensure their work is compliant with health and safety requirements, standard operating procedures, project timescales in line with any scenarios provided. Core skill 4 is creativity and innovation. Students must be able to make creative, innovative improvements to scientific practice, processes and outcomes by following an evaluation cycle which involves plan by identifying a potential area for improvement and subsequently gathering information to understand the need for this required improvement. Students must then be able to generate ideas which will help address this area of improvement. Do by using their knowledge of context to find appropriate and approximate solutions and then implement the improvement. Students should also be able to record their results systematically, organising and recording any relevant data. Check the effectiveness of the improvement by analysing the data and results against any desired outcome. Act. Students should finally review the improvement and be able to recommend next steps. Creativity and innovation are assessed in a number of ESP tasks including Task 2, Planning a Project. Task 3, Analysing data. Task 4, Presenting outcomes and conclusions. Task 5, the group discussion. Creativity and innovation can be embedded within teaching and learning through consistent implementation of the evaluation cycle. This can be done by evaluating substantial pieces of work, such as when students carry out any research and plan a project. The evaluation cycle can also be used as a plenary task when practical work or data analysis is carried out. Core skill 5 is problem solving. Students must be able to solve a problem within a science context by identifying and clearly defining the problem. In order to do this, students need to demonstrate a thorough understanding of the context of the problem. Decide on changes that need to be made, taking into account any steps required to implement the change, the success criteria that will measure the impact of the change, implement the changes and be willing to use new technologies when appropriate to gather data and record results, evaluate the impact and monitor any subsequent changes. This will include students making recommendations for further improvement. Problem solving is assessed within Task 3, analysing data, and Task 5, group discussion within the ESP. Linking back to the group discussion activities, students should embed this approach to problem solving the concerns presented in any scenarios given. As a standalone task, students could also be presented with an issue or problem that requires solving, such as concern from a customer. This could be done alongside working with others. When working as a team, students should ensure their approach to solving the problem is in line with their given job, role, and remit. Students could then carry out the evaluation cycle referenced earlier when considering the impact of any changes that their approach to solving the issue makes. Core skill 6 is communication. Students must be able to provide results and recommendations by communicating in a clear and unambiguous way, tailoring language and technical information to the audience, selecting the most appropriate way to present data, using images and other tools such as infographics, actively listening to contributions and asking follow-up questions to test understanding, responding to contributions and questions using a tone and register that reflects the audience, speaking clearly and confidently, answering the research and/or brief questions, highlighting the commercial and/or business benefits for the customer or clients. Written and verbal communication is assessed within a number of tasks within the ESP, including Task 2, planning a project, Task 3, analysing data, Task 4, presenting outcomes and conclusions, Task 5, the group discussion, and Task 6, the reflective evaluation. Communication skills, both written and verbal, will be embedded throughout teaching and learning. For example, when covering how best to present outcomes of data analysis or reporting of conclusions. One specific activity that can be used to support students within their communication skills is giving them the opportunities to present their learning and/or results. In line with the employer set project, students could design A2 scientific posters as a revision resource for the end of each topic, including any data from the practical activities that they've carried out. They can then be given the opportunity to present their poster and given feedback to help them improve their communication skills. The final core skill, Core Skill 7, is reflective evaluation. Students must be able to evaluate a project's processes and outcomes focusing on experimental design. For example, was the project designed to yield the maximum results from a minimum number of repeated experiments? Accuracy and reliability of results. Students should also be able to comment on whether the sample size was appropriate to ensure accuracy, as well as any equipment used. Reproducibility. Can the results be easily replicated? Suitability of equipment, suitability of methods, own actions during the project. Students should make reference to what they did well and how they can improve. Quality of data. Students should comment on whether there was sufficient data as well as if it was correctly processed. Were all the objectives fulfilled? Recommendations for improvement. Students should be able to suggest how the experiment could be more effective. Reflective evaluation is assessed within a number of tasks, including Task 1, researching, Task 2, planning a project, Task 3, analysing data, Task 4, presenting outcomes and conclusions, Task 5, a group discussion, and Task 6, a reflective evaluation. Reflective evaluation can be embedded through teaching and learning by applying it to relevant activities. For example, when students have carried out a standard operating procedure, they should reflect on the experimental design and the accuracy of the data collected. When working with data, students could reflectively evaluate whether there is sufficient data to make a conclusion and justify this with how it was collected and subsequently processed. Whenever students carry out reflective evaluation, they should focus on making recommendations on how they would improve and what the impact of these changes would be. All the activities referenced in this video can be adapted to meet you and your learners' needs and requirements. The activities suggested are to support students in preparing for the employer set project, but in addition can be used to embed the core skills into everyday teaching by continuously including them within your planning. Thank you for listening, and we hope you found the video useful.